Prince Harry was heard screaming the word divorce after a secret report linked to Meghan claimed he's not the father of their third child. This isn't just another royal rumor. This is a devastating twist that could end the most controversial marriage in modern royal history. A confidential report, allegedly tied to Meghan Markle's own legal files, has surfaced, and what it claims could destroy everything Prince Harry has sacrificed for love. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover what was in that report, how Harry found out, why insiders say he completely snapped, and what this means for the children, the monarchy, and the future of a man who once walked away from a crown for this. Stay with us. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The air inside the Montecito estate was described by one insider as suffocating, charged, not with electricity, but with betrayal. The man once dubbed the spare, who gave up titles, countries, and crowns for what he believed to be love, was now caught in a situation more devastating than any royal snub or tabloid headline. Just days ago, the world was shaken by whispers of an explosive report, one that, if true, could unravel everything Prince Harry has built since leaving the United Kingdom. A report allegedly connected to Meghan Markle herself. A report claiming Harry is not the biological father of their third child. No sooner had this document emerged, cloaked in confidential sources, anonymous whistleblowers, and leaked fragments of what appear to be internal communications, than the rumor mill exploded. Social media lit up, tabloids scrambled, and royal watchers everywhere gasped in disbelief. But none of that noise matched what insiders say happened behind closed doors. Prince Harry, in a moment of white-hot rage, screaming at the top of his lungs just one word: divorce. Those around the couple have reportedly never seen Harry in such a state. In fact, some say even during the infamous Sandringham summit, when he first broke from the royal family, he carried himself with a certain sorrowful calm. But this was something else. Something personal. Something soul-cracking. This wasn't about legacy or duty. This was about identity, fatherhood, betrayal, and the brutal question that cuts deeper than any royal feud. What if the child you've bonded with, held, and called your own isn't yours? This video will take you through the unbelievable journey that has led to this moment. From the earliest suspicions whispered by royal aides, to the emergence of this bombshell report, to the psychological pressure now engulfing Harry's world. Every step will be unpacked in detail. We will walk through timelines, question motives, assess reactions from inside Buckingham Palace and beyond, and examine how this one leak, if true, could permanently sever what little thread of connection remains between the Sussexes and the British monarchy. But let's be clear, this is not merely a royal scandal. This is something far more intimate and far more dangerous. Because at the heart of it is a man who already gave up everything for his version of the truth. Now, that truth may have betrayed him. Before we dive deeper, let's rewind for just a moment. In recent years, Prince Harry has walked through fire for Meghan Markle. Public backlash, family fallout, relentless media persecution. He endured it all, insisting time and time again that his loyalty was unshakable. He defended her against the might of the British tabloid machine. He denounced his own family in global interviews. He distanced himself from the very institution that once defined his existence. All for her. For them. For the family they said they were building together on their own terms. And yet, somewhere in the shadows of that private life, a new narrative appears to have been forming. One that neither palace courtiers nor Netflix cameras picked up. According to confidential sources, a file was quietly circulated among certain legal and royal networks suggesting discrepancies in paternity records. Initially dismissed as mere gossip, the file reportedly gained attention when a digital forensic analyst linked it to metadata originating from Meghan's legal team. It was then that the document was taken seriously. Because the suggestion wasn't just that Prince Harry may not be the biological father of their alleged third child, but that Meghan may have known this for some time. It's hard to overstate how explosive that allegation is. Within the context of royal succession, bloodlines matter. Titles, inheritances, and constitutional legitimacy are all built on biological heritage. While Harry has already walked away from formal titles for himself and his children, there are still legacy concerns, public image implications, and perhaps most significantly, emotional consequences. At the center of this is a man who has always struggled with identity. From the haunting comparisons to his mother, Princess Diana, to the cruel tabloid insinuations that he was the product of an affair with James Hewitt, Harry's life has been stalked by whispers about blood and belonging. He has fought for autonomy, authenticity, and escape from the royal machine. But what happens when the thing you escaped for becomes the source of your deepest pain? The sources who claim to have witnessed Harry's reaction describe it not as a royal outburst, but as a guttural cry, raw and human. He wasn't screaming at Meghan, one claimed. He was screaming into the walls, into the void, like a man realizing his whole foundation had just been ripped out from under him. He allegedly locked himself away for nearly a full day afterward, refusing to speak to staff or family. He took long walks on the Montecito estate grounds alone, head down, pacing, muttering to himself. What makes this more devastating is that the report was not revealed through a leak to the media. It reportedly came to light in a private legal dispute, unrelated to the public eye, and had been concealed until recently. The suggestion from insiders is that it may have surfaced during document sharing for a financial agreement, potentially tied to Meghan's business interests or property dealings. One accidental disclosure, and the illusion shattered. Public reaction has been predictably chaotic. Online platforms have been flooded with speculation. Some claim the entire story is a fabrication meant to smear the Sussexes. Others, particularly former royal staffers, say it finally confirms long-held suspicions. Still others see it as poetic justice. The couple that thrived on controlling narratives now undone by one they didn't see coming. But the truth, as always, is far more complex. This isn't just about royalty, DNA, or deception. It's about two people whose relationship has always defied expectations, first with their rapid courtship, then their bold departure, then their rebranding as humanitarians, celebrities, and victims of a cruel system. And now, it's about whether that relationship can survive one final, personal, unforgivable revelation. Over the course of this story, we'll confront the key questions. Who created the report, and why? What does Meghan stand to gain or lose from this leak? Could Harry legally challenge the claim, and what would that process look like? What impact does this have on their existing children, and how is the royal family responding behind closed doors? As always, we'll let the facts speak. But this time, we'll also listen to the silence. Because sometimes the most deafening statements are the ones made when a man walks out of his own home, screaming not at the world, but at the end of the life he thought he was living. This is the story of a prince, a wife, and a secret that could undo everything. It all began with a document, just a few pages long, but capable of blowing a crater through the foundation of one of the world's most talked about modern couples. The document was never meant to be public. It wasn't released in a press briefing, it wasn't leaked to the tabloids, and it certainly didn't come from any official palace channel. According to sources close to both British and American legal circles, the report surfaced in a confidential review of documentation tied to a property acquisition under Meghan Markle's name. Hidden within a stack of electronic files was something unusual, a digitally signed statement alleging that Prince Harry was not the biological father of a third child associated with the couple. At first, the inclusion of the document appeared to be a clerical mistake, but a closer examination raised red flags. The file was encrypted with multiple layers of password protection. Its metadata showed it had been modified on at least 3 separate occasions by legal professionals with affiliations in California and New York. It bore language not of a press release or media narrative, but of a deposition-style summary, objective, brief, and chilling. It read more like a courtroom exhibit than a gossip item. The claim itself was simple in structure but devastating in implication. It asserted that Meghan Markle had knowingly withheld the identity of the biological father of a third child, who had been presumed by the public and perhaps even by Harry himself to be their shared offspring. The phrasing was careful, laced with legal ambiguity, but it made one thing unmistakably clear: there were doubts strong enough to be formally recorded. Whether these doubts came from Meghan's side, from a third-party medical source, or from an attorney attempting to future-proof a custody dispute remains unclear. But the presence of the report alone triggered a private storm within Harry's world. The origin of the report is one of the most alarming aspects of this entire affair. For months, royal experts had speculated that tensions between Harry and Meghan were escalating behind the scenes, with several noting that Harry appeared withdrawn and less enthusiastic during joint appearances. But no one anticipated the emergence of something this catastrophic. Leaks tied to private legal transactions are not just uncommon, they're potentially criminal. Yet someone, somewhere, was willing to risk exposure, legal retaliation, and media blowback to make sure this document saw daylight. A digital forensics expert, speaking under condition of anonymity, analyzed the fingerprint data in the leaked file. What they found shocked them. While the original document was drafted in a high-security legal software suite commonly used by top-tier international law firms, at least one revision had been made on a personal laptop traced to Meghan Markle's known location in California. The analyst stopped short of claiming that Meghan wrote the document, but noted that her digital certificate had been used during one version's encryption process. That alone suggests she either saw it, signed it, or had it in her possession long enough for it to be tagged with her identity. It was at this point that questions began to swirl. Why would Meghan allow such a document to exist? If she had nothing to hide, why permit legal channels to acknowledge a possible discrepancy in paternity? Was she preparing for a legal battle Harry didn't yet know about? Was this part of a strategic maneuver, an act of leverage, or even a desperate cry for control? Experts in high-profile divorces pointed out that such documents are often created not to be used, but to be held as insurance, ammunition, should things turn hostile. One legal scholar compared it to loading a gun and locking it in a drawer. It may never be used, but its existence changes the balance of power. In Meghan's case, such a document, if crafted under legal advice, could give her leverage in custody discussions, financial disputes, or narrative control in the court of public opinion. But the catch? It assumes the other party never finds out. Harry, it seems, did find out. And not through an emotional confession or a calm, measured disclosure. According to sources, he discovered the document while reviewing secondary paperwork tied to one of their ongoing financial audits. He had apparently asked for transparency around recent property investments, sensing something wasn't quite right. It was during this deep dive into legal files that the damning report surfaced. His reaction was immediate and volcanic. Those closest to the couple described Harry as blindsided, destroyed, and absolutely unprepared. While he had dealt with betrayals in the past, from family, friends, and media, this was on a different level. This was a betrayal from the one person he believed would never lie to him about something so fundamental. It is also worth noting that this child, the third one alluded to in the report, has not been publicly acknowledged by either Harry or Meghan in any major platform. There have been whispers, odd social media patterns, and brief mentions in obscure interviews, but no formal photos, no birth announcements, no paparazzi captures. That alone added fuel to the fire. Why the secrecy? Why the inconsistencies in Meghan's timeline of pregnancies? Why do no hospital birth records exist for this third child in public databases where such information is typically listed for celebrities? Royal historian Margot Wells noted, "In the history of the British monarchy, there has never been a situation where a member of the immediate royal family is said to be raising a child whose paternity is disputed at this level. We've had rumors, yes, plenty, but not digital documentation signed and encrypted by people directly tied to the alleged mother. That detail matters more than people realize. Because if the document had emerged from a tabloid newsroom or some anonymous gossip blog, it would have been dismissed instantly. But this came from a data trail that led straight back to Meghan's legal affairs. That makes it not only suspicious, but dangerously credible. And yet, Meghan has not commented. Not a single statement. No denial, no confirmation, not even an indirect rebuttal through a publicist or social media post. That silence, in a media environment she once mastered, is deafening. Some say she's waiting for legal clearance to speak. Others believe she's trying to assess the fallout before deciding how to respond. Still others claim she's entirely unconcerned, believing that any controversy only fuels more attention, and in the world of streaming deals and book sales, attention is currency. But if that's the strategy, it may be a fatal miscalculation, because this isn't a press headline she can outrun. This is a question that cuts into the soul of every parent. Are you truly the mother or father of the child you love? For Harry, that question is now unavoidable, and the world is watching how he will answer it. As we transition into the next chapter of this unraveling saga, we must examine the immediate consequences, the emotional eruption inside Harry's household, his alleged threats of divorce, and the chaos that followed his discovery. Because a report, no matter how explosive, is just the spark. What it ignites depends entirely on who finds it, and how broken they already are when they do. The first indication that something had gone terribly wrong came not from Harry himself, but from the sudden disruption in the daily routine of the Sussex estate. Staff members reportedly noticed an eerie silence fall over the house on the morning after the document was discovered. The usual sounds, low music from the West Wing, the rhythmic tapping of Meghan's keyboard in her office, Harry's dogs barking playfully in the garden, were absent. In their place was a heavy, almost suffocating stillness that hovered like fog across the marble floors and through the glass-walled corridors. According to a senior house assistant who has worked with the couple since their early days in Montecito, the silence was broken not by conversation, but by a violent crash. Something heavy, a lamp, a sculpture, perhaps even a chair, had been hurled across the room. Moments later came the voice, unmistakable and enraged. Prince Harry's voice. Not the calm, reflective tone often heard in interviews or charitable speeches. This time, it was primal, guttural. Not words at first, just sounds, raw anguish escaping in bursts that echoed off the high ceilings. And then it came, the word that shook the house. Divorce. Not whispered. Not muttered. Screamed. Over and over again. Divorce. I want out. You lied to me. Staff nearby were reportedly frozen. One junior chef dropped a dish. Another housekeeper turned and left the room, quietly texting her supervisor. Within minutes, the estate's top security personnel were instructed to give the couple complete privacy and to cancel all external appointments for the next 72 hours. What happened during those hours would become the most emotionally volatile period of Prince Harry's post-royal life. Inside his private office, a room lined with childhood photos, royal mementos, and framed portraits of Princess Diana, Harry is said to have locked himself in. Not for an hour. For nearly 12. Aides described him as unreachable, volatile, and completely unmoored from reality. Several times, Meghan is reported to have tried to approach the door, only to be told to stay away. You betrayed me, he allegedly shouted through the door. Don't speak to me. Don't even look at me. For a man who once walked away from the only institution he had ever known in defense of the woman he loved, the betrayal hit harder than any tabloid or family feud ever could. This wasn't just about royal titles, public image, or even media scrutiny. This was about the core of who he believed he was, a husband, a protector, a father. And in an instant, all of it seemed to collapse under the weight of a single document. Witnesses say Harry did not eat for an entire day. He refused all meals, ignored his phone, and didn't check in on his children. For those close to him, this was a red flag. No matter how chaotic the world became, Harry had always maintained his bond with his kids. But not this time. This time, he couldn't face them. He spent much of the day pacing the grounds in silence, sometimes stopping abruptly and staring off into the hills. A gardener reported seeing him sit for over an hour on the far edge of the property near the orchard, motionless, staring at the dirt, his hands clenched together between his knees. When an assistant approached with water, Harry reportedly waved him away and said, "I don't want anything from anyone. Not now." Meghan, for her part, was described as composed but distant. She didn't chase him. She didn't attempt to explain, at least not in the dramatic fashion one might expect. A few whispered conversations with a personal assistant, some phone calls to her legal team, and then she vanished into the inner quarters of the house. Whether that was part of a calculated response or simply a moment of private distress remains a subject of speculation. By the second day, Harry's mood shifted from silent devastation to a kind of stormy clarity. He emerged from his office, visibly disheveled, eyes red, hair unkempt, and reportedly asked to speak with his legal counsel immediately. The word divorce was not just an emotional outburst anymore. It was now on paper, in legal drafts being reviewed by his private attorney. Staff were ordered to secure financial records, including shared business accounts, property titles, and investment holdings. But perhaps the most telling moment came when Harry reportedly called his therapist, the same one he credited during the Oprah interview for helping him process childhood trauma. The conversation, described as unusually long and emotionally charged, ended with Harry requesting that all future therapy sessions be held away from the estate. He didn't want Meghan in the vicinity, even indirectly. "I can't heal where the wound is still open," he allegedly told the therapist. The royal family was informed shortly thereafter, not through a formal statement or press alert, but through a direct call from one of Harry's closest friends in the UK. That friend had apparently been contacted by Harry in the early morning hours after the report was found. In the call, Harry's voice cracked. "It's happening again," he reportedly said, a reference that left his friend unsure whether he meant the betrayal or the public scrutiny, or both. Charles, upon hearing the news, was reportedly devastated. Regardless of the tensions that had long existed between him and his younger son, Charles had always hoped for some kind of reconciliation. The idea that Harry's family life, already so fraught with external pressure, was now imploding from within, was more than he could bear. Sources say he canceled all public engagements that day and retreated into private quarters at Clarence House. William's reaction was different. Some insiders say he was stoic, even cold. He had long warned Harry that he was moving too fast with Meghan, that their bond was built more on shared trauma than on sustainable compatibility. When he heard the news, William reportedly muttered, "He finally sees it." Whether that was said with sadness or quiet vindication remains unclear. But it wasn't just the royal family reacting. Across the pond, media outlets scrambled for any confirmation or follow-up. Paparazzi began camping outside the Sussex estate. Helicopters circled. Security was doubled. And yet, no statement came. The silence was strategic, perhaps even deliberate. But inside the estate, chaos reigned. Harry's legal team began drawing up emergency scenarios. What would custody look like if the divorce proceeded? Would a paternity test be requested? If the report's claims were confirmed, what legal standing would Harry have over the third child? Could he sue for fraud? Could he force Meghan to undergo DNA testing? One insider with knowledge of the legal discussions described the mood as nuclear. They weren't discussing possibilities anymore. They were preparing for war. And in the middle of that war was Harry, torn between disbelief and fury, between sorrow and determination. At times, he reportedly wept openly in front of staff. At other times, he paced the hallways, muttering legal questions under his breath. Is it illegal to falsify paternity records? He was heard saying. What about tax declarations? If it's not my child, was I lied to about deductions? What's perhaps most tragic is the shift in Harry's identity. The man who once defined himself by his emotional openness, his commitment to mental health, his fight against institutional cruelty, now found himself consumed by the very forces he thought he had escaped. Betrayal, mistrust, isolation. The very cycle that haunted his mother now seemed to be tightening around his own life, threatening to pull him under. The only thing that offered him any clarity, sources say, was distance. On the third day after the eruption, Harry reportedly packed a single bag, instructed his team not to reveal his location, and left the estate. It's unclear where he went. Some speculate he traveled to a private retreat owned by a trusted friend in Colorado. Others believe he may have flown to the UK in secret, seeking counsel from royal aides he once trusted. What is known, however, is this. When he left, he did not say goodbye to Meghan. No words. No eye contact. Just silence. He walked out the front door, past the staff, past the photographers hiding in hedges, past the world that once celebrated his love story. And he disappeared. Because sometimes, the only thing more painful than discovering a truth you never expected is realizing that everyone else might have known it before you did. At the center of this explosive revelation lies a haunting question that no royal insider, legal counsel, or former press secretary can yet answer definitively. Who was the third child? Unlike Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, whose names, titles, and existence have been widely documented, albeit with plenty of controversy surrounding their origins and public appearances, the alleged third child remains a mystery cloaked in silence. No birth announcement, no public photo, no confirmed due date, no visible pregnancy, no christening, nothing official. The rumors surrounding this child's existence have been around for years, often circulating in fringe gossip circles and online forums where royal watchers dissect every frame of Meghan's public appearances. These rumors gained momentum during a period of public withdrawal that began after Meghan and Harry's last Netflix promotional tour. Speculation intensified when eagle-eyed viewers noticed what appeared to be a suspiciously edited family photo posted on social media. The image, supposedly featuring Harry, Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet, showed a third child in the background, half-shadowed, blurry, almost as if added digitally. At the time, most dismissed the speculation as a conspiracy theory. It didn't help that the Sussexes have been known to stage-manage their public image with surgical precision. But after the emergence of the confidential report alleging that Harry may not be the father of a third child, people began looking back at that photo and others like it, with fresh eyes. Was there something there all along? Let's start by asking the obvious. Has Meghan Markle ever publicly confirmed the birth of a third child? The answer is no. At least, not directly. However, There have been cryptic statements, particularly in lesser-known interviews or off-the-cuff remarks during podcast appearances, in which she alluded to the children as a plural beyond Archie and Lilibet. In one such appearance on a women's wellness podcast, Meghan said, "Being a mom of young ones, especially when they're all so close in age, it changes how you see yourself." That phrasing, "they're all so close in age," stood out to many listeners. It was not corrected, edited, or clarified afterward. That statement reignited speculation, especially when paired with Meghan's extended absence from the public eye during a roughly 7-month stretch shortly after Lilibet's first birthday. At the time, her team attributed the absence to Meghan focusing on private wellness goals and family priorities. But royal correspondents now suspect that this was a cover for something else entirely, possibly a secret birth, or the integration of a child born via surrogate or adopted under tightly sealed arrangements. If a third child does exist, where is this child? And why has there been such a deliberate effort to erase them from the public narrative? This brings us to one of the most controversial threads in this unfolding saga, the idea that Meghan and Harry may have concealed the existence of this child intentionally, not just from the media, but potentially even from close friends and royal institutions. Some believe this was done to avoid further scrutiny from the monarchy. Others argue that the secrecy could be tied to legal questions regarding paternity or custody rights involving a third-party biological father. If the child was born through a surrogacy agreement and Harry was not the genetic father, the legal implications are vast. In the United States, surrogacy laws vary state by state, but California, where the Sussexes reside, allows for pre-birth orders that designate intended parents before a child is even born. If Meghan pursued this process privately, she could have secured full parental rights without requiring Harry's biological involvement. If he believed the child was biologically his but never questioned the paperwork, this alone could lead to serious legal and emotional consequences. Some former palace aides and royal analysts believe Meghan may have taken this route deliberately, citing her fierce desire to control her narrative and protect her children from what she's described as a hostile media environment. But the secrecy now appears to be unraveling. One theory gaining traction is that the child was born to a surrogate using Meghan's egg and another man's sperm, potentially under circumstances Harry was unaware of. If that proves true, it could explain the recent emergence of legal documents hinting at paternity disputes and custodial modifications. If Harry never signed off on these arrangements, or worse, if he did under false pretenses, this goes far beyond a family dispute. It veers into territory that legal scholars call custodial misrepresentation, which can trigger lawsuits, annulments of parental rights, and major financial recalculations in divorce proceedings. To understand the magnitude of this, we need to examine why royal bloodlines matter so much. For centuries, the British monarchy has functioned on the assumption of pure, traceable lineage. Children born into royal bloodlines are assigned ranks, inheritance, and legal status according to their direct relation to the reigning monarch. This hierarchy has legal ramifications, especially if any child is named in royal trusts, property rights, or succession paperwork. Even though Harry and Meghan voluntarily stepped down from official duties, their children's existence still affects constitutional optics. When Lilibet was born, her name was added to the royal line of succession. If this third child had ever been listed, and that listing was based on false paternity, it could technically be considered royal fraud. But beyond legal definitions and constitutional concerns lies a deeply human question. Why would Meghan hide the truth from Harry, if she did? Those close to the couple say the tension had been simmering long before this report emerged. Harry had grown increasingly distant, reportedly frustrated by Meghan's obsession with brand deals and her alleged micromanagement of their children's media presence. There were also whispers of arguments over schooling, security, and religious upbringing. The child's identity, then, becomes more than a legal issue. It becomes the flashpoint of a growing emotional rift. If Harry believed he was the father and built a bond with the child, discovering otherwise is not just a betrayal, it's an existential fracture. And if Meghan had doubts all along but chose not to disclose them, that deception cuts deeper than any public scandal. Adding to the mystery is the complete lack of medical documentation. Unlike most high-profile celebrity births, there were no hospital photos, no attending physician statements, no verified records confirming the location or date of birth. Attempts by journalists to uncover hospital logs or birthing center details have turned up nothing. It's as if the child materialized out of thin air. There is, however, one strange detail that keeps surfacing in insider discussions, a recurring reference to a home arrangement birth. This term, used by a staff member close to the couple, suggests that if the child was born naturally or via surrogate, the birth may have occurred at a private residence with only minimal professional assistance. If true, this could have been an intentional effort to keep everything off the books. A midwife, paid in cash. A legal team drafting post-birth affidavits. A digital trail scrubbed clean. And yet, no secret stays buried forever. That brings us to the last clue, a confidential message forwarded to royal advisors just weeks before this scandal broke. The email, allegedly from a whistleblower working with a surrogacy agency in California, contained one chilling line. He doesn't know. She paid extra to keep it quiet. The DNA doesn't match. If that email is genuine, and at least 2 sources say it has been reviewed by palace investigators, it could be the thread that unravels the entire situation. Not just a betrayal between spouses, but a deliberate concealment of truth with international consequences. In the weeks ahead, the world will be watching to see if this mysterious third child is acknowledged, denied, or swept under the rug. But no matter how the Sussexes try to spin it, the damage is done. The existence of the child, and the growing suspicion surrounding their identity, has become a question not just of parenting, but of integrity, trust, and the future of a couple once believed to be inseparable. From the very beginning, Meghan Markle's public image has been crafted with the precision of a Hollywood production. Whether appearing on the cover of major magazines, delivering poised interviews, or curating social media-ready moments of motherhood and advocacy, everything about Meghan's brand has been deliberate. For some, this level of media mastery was empowering proof that a modern woman could stand strong within, or outside of, an outdated monarchy. For others, it triggered suspicion. Was this woman calculating every step not just for survival, but for domination? In the wake of the third child scandal, a new question arises, not about what Meghan has shown the world, but about what she's chosen to hide. At the center of this unfolding controversy is not just a child whose parentage is in dispute, but a strategy that now appears to have unraveled under its own weight. If Meghan indeed orchestrated, approved, or even quietly allowed the creation of a report that undermines Prince Harry's role as father, then we must understand why. What strategic value did this serve? What was she trying to protect or control? The answer may lie in how Meghan has always viewed narrative. Since marrying into the royal family, Meghan has consistently positioned herself as a victim of injustice, racism, xenophobia, elitism, and institutional coldness. Whether or not these claims hold merit, the pattern has been consistent. Every public challenge was reframed as an attack on her dignity. Every critique was repackaged as an opportunity for personal empowerment. And most importantly, every piece of damaging information was either preemptively countered or buried beneath a flood of personal storytelling. The Oprah interview remains the most famous example of this tactic, a preemptive strike against the monarchy at a time when she and Harry were facing growing criticism. This pattern extended into her handling of their children's public exposure. Meghan fiercely protected their images, to the point of refusing photo ops, official portraits, or even hospital photos. On the surface, this could be interpreted as a mother's desire for privacy. But viewed through a more cynical lens, especially now, it could also be seen as a tactic to manage the optics of a family narrative that wasn't fully grounded in transparency. So when the paternity report emerged, it disrupted more than just Harry's emotional equilibrium. It exposed what might be the first visible crack in Meghan's tightly managed PR fortress. If Harry didn't know about the child's true origins, if he was deliberately kept in the dark, then Meghan's strategy wasn't just about brand control. It was about narrative monopoly. She wasn't merely protecting her children from public scrutiny. She was possibly controlling the very story of who they were and who they belonged to. The idea that Meghan might intentionally suppress or manipulate information of this magnitude isn't far-fetched to those who've studied her approach to media. From carefully staged appearances to Netflix documentaries filled with selective framing, her image has always been her greatest asset. In Hollywood, that's common. In royalty, it's destabilizing. Because monarchy, however outdated it may seem, is built on transparency of lineage and order. Meghan's approach inverted that tradition. She replaced hierarchy with privacy. She swapped institutional duty for self-expression. And for a while, it worked. But this scandal threatens to collapse that model entirely. The internal logic behind releasing, or at least retaining, a report that questions Harry's paternity may come down to legal leverage. In high-stakes divorces, and particularly those involving cross-border finances, parenthood becomes a tactical instrument. If Meghan's legal team anticipated a potential breakdown in the marriage, or if trust had eroded behind closed doors, then this document could serve as a preemptive weapon, something to wield in court, in negotiation, or even in public discourse if the need arose. Critics of Meghan argue that she's always operated with an exit strategy. From the moment she stepped into royal life, some say she was planning her escape, with receipts in hand. Whether that's true or not, the existence of this paternity-related report suggests planning, not panic. This wasn't a moment of emotional vulnerability or confession. This was a document prepared, encrypted, and filed away until someone, likely by accident, unearthed it. Adding complexity is the eerie silence that followed its emergence. Meghan, typically quick to respond to media flare-ups, went radio silent. No interviews, no Instagram quotes, no official rebuttals through spokespersons. That silence sent a message all its own. Either she was caught off guard, or she was calculating her next move with even more intensity than before. In recent days, some insiders have speculated that Meghan may be readying a counteroffensive, a strategy that would reframe the narrative once again, not as betrayal, but as trauma. Already, several friendly media outlets have begun publishing pieces speculating about Meghan's mental health, her overwhelming burden as a mother, and the injustice of expecting women to carry secrets that are not theirs alone. These themes are familiar to anyone who has tracked her media approach over the years. The playbook appears to be back in motion. But this time, the stakes are different. Because if she turns this into another victimhood arc, it may backfire spectacularly. Public sympathy wanes when children are involved, especially if deception is involved. And if Harry, once her most devoted defender, turns against her, the emotional optics shift instantly. The man who left everything behind to stand by her side becomes the abandoned father, the misled husband, the tragic figure reclaiming his dignity. Strategically, Meghan now faces a crossroads. Does she double down and attempt to control the narrative through sympathy and silence? Or does she come clean, acknowledge mistakes, and risk short-term scandal for long-term credibility? There's also the financial dimension. Brand Sussex is tied directly to public trust. Netflix deals, book sales, speaking engagements, and merchandise all rely on the illusion of a functional, principled, charismatic family unit. If that illusion collapses under the weight of lies, the empire built around them could shrink overnight. Already, companies linked to the Sussexes are said to be in assessment mode, quietly reviewing contracts for morality clauses. One media partner reportedly placed a hold on a future series, pending clarification about the couple's legal status and public perception. In other words, the fallout is not just personal, it's commercial. To navigate this chaos, Meghan will likely rely on the same inner circle that has always insulated her: high-powered attorneys, public relations firms with crisis management expertise, and sympathetic journalists willing to shape narratives in her favor. But what even the most skilled strategists can't undo is trust lost between two people at the center of this story. No matter how well she spins the public angle, Meghan now faces a deeper challenge: repairing or preparing to legally fight the man who once saw her as his only safe harbor. And here lies the greatest irony. Meghan's entire strategy, built on controlling her image, may now be undone not by an enemy, but by herself. If she wrote or authorized the report that undermines Harry's identity as a father, then she initiated the very crisis that could destroy everything she's built. In the next section, we'll examine how the royal family is processing all this. Not in public statements or rehearsed interviews, but in private corridors where loyalty is fragile and scandal is a threat to the entire institution. At Buckingham Palace, silence is not simply a lack of sound. It is a language sharp, deliberate, strategic. In the grand halls of monarchy, where every word is scrutinized and every glance interpreted, silence can speak louder than any press release. And in the wake of the bombshell report suggesting that Prince Harry may not be the biological father of a third child allegedly born to Meghan Markle, the palace has responded in the only way it knows best: through whispers, protocol shifts, and controlled distance. But beneath the gilded ceilings and behind the guarded faces, insiders say that fury is building. This isn't just a scandal. It's a breach of something sacred: lineage, trust, and the very fabric of royal continuity. And for King Charles III, already carrying the burden of a monarchy in transition, it is a personal insult layered atop years of disappointment, anxiety, and heartbreak. Sources close to Charles describe his initial reaction as one of stunned disbelief. When first informed by a senior aide, hours after the news broke across encrypted channels, he reportedly sat in silence for a full minute before uttering a single word. Again. It was a word laced not just with exasperation, but with an ache that only a father could understand. For Charles, this scandal was not a standalone event. It was the latest in a string of betrayals and wounds inflicted by his youngest son, each more painful than the last. The palace had already endured the Oprah interview, the Netflix series, the explosive memoir, and the relentless drumbeat of public accusations. But this? A scandal that threatened the integrity of royal bloodlines, the unspoken paternity of a potential descendant? It cut to the core of everything the monarchy is built upon. For Charles, whose entire reign has been shadowed by the challenge of modernizing tradition without dismantling it, the situation was more than personal, it was institutional. The king reportedly summoned his top advisors the same evening the report emerged. The meeting took place not in a public reception room, but in the private council chamber deep within Clarence House. Present were his most trusted aides, Sir Clive Alderton, private secretary and longtime confidant, Baroness Case, head of constitutional matters, and Sir Edward Young, now a retired advisor but still summoned in moments of royal crisis. The tone was grim. The topic wasn't how to refute the report. It was how to contain the damage and prevent further contamination of the royal image. Among the many questions posed that evening, one dominated all others. What if it's true? What if Prince Harry truly is not the father of the child referenced in the report? What does that mean for inheritance structures, for line of succession charts, for financial disbursements that may have already been made? More urgently, what does it mean for the monarchy's public trust, a currency more fragile now than ever before? Reports from insiders say that contingency plans were discussed, not to strip Harry's existing children of titles, something that would spark a constitutional debate, but to ensure that any future claims made by Meghan or legal representatives could be preemptively discredited. It was suggested that all future appearances by Harry and Meghan in official royal narratives be removed. Their images, already scarce, would be quietly erased from ceremonial documentation. Their inclusion in the king's birthday honors list was cancelled, and a planned charitable appearance in the name of the Royal Foundation was scrapped without explanation. While Charles stewed in diplomatic fury, Prince William's reaction was less guarded. According to sources who've spoken with staff at Kensington Palace, William's first instinct was not to question the authenticity of the report. It was to lament that it had taken Harry so long to see the truth. One insider described William as exhausted, not with the monarchy, but with the emotional toll his brother continued to place on everyone around him. He reportedly remarked, "This is what happens when you abandon your family for someone who trades in illusions." Harsh words, yes, but not surprising given the history. William and Harry have not spoken face-to-face in any meaningful way for months. Their last private exchange, conducted over a secure line arranged by a mutual friend, reportedly ended with William telling Harry, "You've changed." And not for the better. That fracture only deepened after the release of Harry's memoir, which portrayed William as cold, controlling, and complicit in the very culture Harry sought to escape. Now, with this scandal hanging in the air like a toxic cloud, William is said to be done with any remaining diplomatic gestures. Though he has not issued any statement, his actions speak volumes. A joint charity initiative that once bore both brothers' names has now been rebranded under William and Catherine alone. And a speech William was expected to deliver at an upcoming climate summit, which once included a tribute to my brother's efforts across the Atlantic, had that line removed in final edits. Beyond Charles and William, the broader royal machine has kicked into quiet overdrive. Palace aides have implemented what they refer to as the containment corridor, a media and institutional response plan first drafted during the height of the Diana years and later used during the Andrew scandal. It involves 3 layers: restrict access to family commentary, engage trusted royal correspondence with controlled leaks, and limit exposure to high-risk public engagements. Aides who once maintained cordial if strained contact with Meghan's representatives have now cut all communication. Royal archivists have been instructed to review all previously approved documents involving the Sussex children. Even ceremonial planners have been advised to exclude the Sussexes from potential invitations for upcoming events, including Trooping the Colour, the Princess of Wales's birthday celebration, and the King's holiday message filming. What's more telling, however, is the psychological toll this latest scandal has taken on those who still believed reconciliation was possible. One senior palace advisor, long seen as a moderate voice in royal circles, was overheard saying, "There's no going back now. This isn't about family anymore. This is about survival." The sentiment among many is that Meghan has become too unpredictable, too dangerous to the carefully curated image of the monarchy. But there's also a growing fear that Harry, even if he breaks away from Meghan now, may never fully rejoin the fold. His trust in institutions, shattered since childhood, has now been compounded by the collapse of his personal life. A man without a country. A prince without a purpose. And what of Queen Camilla? While often overlooked in moments of scandal, Camilla has reportedly taken a firm stance behind Charles, privately stating that the best outcome is for the Sussex drama to be formally and finally separated from the rest of the monarchy. She is said to have advised Charles to close the book on Harry if divorce proceedings go forward. A brutal suggestion, but one Camilla knows all too well from her own years living on the margins of royal acceptance. In public, Buckingham Palace will continue its ritualized silence. Statements will remain neutral. Spokespersons will cite private family matters. The Queen's portrait will remain in its frame. But make no mistake, the damage is deep, and the fury is real. Behind the palace walls, contingency is becoming policy, and forgiveness is being replaced by calculation. Because in the world of monarchy, lineage is not just biology, it's everything. And when that sacred lineage is thrown into question, the response is not emotional. It's strategic, surgical, and absolute. The word divorce is no longer whispered in the halls of Montecito, it echoes. It has transformed from a threat muttered in emotional desperation to a formal legal consideration now making its way through confidential legal channels. For months, observers speculated whether the cracks in Harry and Meghan's relationship would widen into a permanent separation. With the emergence of the paternity report and Harry's explosive reaction to it, that speculation has turned into a chilling reality. The path to divorce for Harry and Meghan is not straightforward. Unlike conventional marriages, theirs is intertwined with international politics, massive media value, intellectual property contracts, and complex custodial arrangements across borders. Add to that the high-stakes backdrop of royalty, and what you have is not just a broken marriage, it's a dismantling of a global brand. The first real sign that divorce was more than just an emotional response came when Prince Harry allegedly instructed his legal team to initiate a full review of his joint financial holdings with Meghan. According to sources with knowledge of the matter, the review included assets tied to Archwell, shared real estate properties in Montecito and Canada, residual earnings from their Netflix and Spotify deals, and the legal rights to their documentary footage. He also requested an audit of trust fund disbursements made to Meghan or their children over the last 4 years. This move was not just about money. It was about clarity. If Harry was going to end the marriage, he needed to understand exactly where he stood, financially, contractually, and as a father. His team reportedly began compiling paperwork that would serve as the foundation of an early divorce petition under California family law, where asset division, spousal support, and custody are governed with strict guidelines but can be heavily negotiated when fame and wealth are involved. Meghan, for her part, has not remained passive. Though she has not publicly responded to the scandal or the divorce rumors, insiders close to her legal team claim that she is bracing for a legal storm. Some speculate she may file a competing petition, a strategic maneuver that allows her to control the framing of the divorce narrative. By filing first, she can make claims of emotional distress, media harassment, and even lay the groundwork for a custody advantage. Her legal strategy, sources say, will revolve around positioning herself as the primary caregiver and protector of the children, emphasizing Harry's alleged emotional instability in the wake of the paternity controversy. At the heart of these legal preparations lies a brutal question. What happens to the children? Under California law, the presumption is for joint custody unless one parent is deemed unfit. But in cases where paternity is in dispute, the matter becomes much more complex. If the third child is proven to not be Harry's biological offspring, and if that child was never legally adopted by him, Harry could lose all legal claim to custody, or even visitation rights, over that child. He could also pursue legal recourse against Meghan for fraud or misrepresentation. Legal scholars have noted that if Meghan knowingly withheld information about the child's paternity, Harry could file a civil suit, potentially seeking financial damages for emotional distress and misallocated funds used to support a child he believed to be his. That case, while unprecedented in royal circles, would echo similar lawsuits filed by high-profile figures in the entertainment industry under similar circumstances. However, pursuing such a case publicly would involve unsealing medical records, legal contracts, and family correspondence, something both sides are said to be deeply reluctant to do. The exposure of such documents would not only shred the last remnants of the couple's public image, it could also cause irreparable damage to their children's reputations. Which is why, according to multiple reports, Harry's legal team is considering a private arbitration process. One that would allow both parties to reach a settlement behind closed doors, free from public courtrooms and paparazzi-laden entrances. The goal would be to negotiate custody, divide assets, and resolve the paternity matter without the world watching every painful detail unfold. Yet there is another layer to this legal unraveling that cannot be ignored: the monarchy's potential intervention. While Harry is no longer a working royal, his choices still reverberate within the institution he left behind. A divorce, especially one shrouded in scandal and paternal doubt, poses a significant reputational risk to the royal family. The idea that a former senior royal could be publicly entangled in a paternity scandal of this magnitude is not only unprecedented, it is a nightmare for palace advisors. Multiple royal sources have confirmed that Buckingham Palace is exploring legal avenues to formally and permanently distance Harry from the monarchy, should divorce proceedings go public. This would go beyond removing titles or cutting off financial support. It would involve revising official documents of succession, revisiting royal trust arrangements, and potentially issuing a public declaration that Prince Harry's family is no longer in any way tied to the constitutional future of the crown. Such a move, while drastic, is not without precedent. In the 20th century, King Edward VIII was exiled from public royal life following his marriage to Wallis Simpson. While the circumstances were different, the motivation was similar: to protect the integrity and continuity of the institution at all costs. The idea of royal cutoff is especially urgent in light of rumors that Meghan has, in the past, used royal branding and associations to further her personal projects. If divorce proceeds and legal lines are not firmly drawn, there is a risk that future ventures, books, films, or interviews could continue to exploit royal imagery without accountability. Advisors are reportedly drafting guidelines that would limit or prohibit the use of any royal titles, affiliations, or family stories in post-divorce business ventures. These guidelines, while unenforceable in the U.S., could serve as a legal foundation for reputational protection within the U.K. Beyond the legal maneuvering lies the emotional toll. For Harry, the possibility of divorce is not just a personal failure, it is the unraveling of a dream he sacrificed everything to build. He left his country, gave up his titles, turned his back on his family, and withstood public ridicule, all for a marriage he believed in. To now face its collapse, under the shadow of betrayal and confusion, is a devastation not even the most trained palace advisor could have predicted. Friends close to Harry have said he is vacillating between rage and sorrow. One reportedly quoted him saying, "I don't know who to believe anymore, not even myself." That level of emotional disorientation is dangerous for anyone, but especially for someone with Harry's history, deeply affected by his mother's tragic end, haunted by institutional coldness, and burdened by years of suppressed grief. And Meghan? For her, the divorce is perhaps less an emotional catastrophe and more a strategic shift. If she proceeds with separation, she is likely to craft a public narrative rooted in resilience. Already, there are whispers of a new book proposal being circulated among publishers, one centered around raising children while navigating betrayal and public scrutiny. Whether this is a sincere outlet for her experience or a calculated PR move remains to be seen. Regardless, the separation of these two figures is now in motion. The question is no longer if, it is how, when, and with what consequences. The house in Montecito is quiet once again. Not the silence of peace, but of tension. Staff walk slower. Assistants whisper more than they speak. Lawyers come and go at odd hours, and the once vibrant rooms where the couple filmed cheerful footage for their documentary now feel dimmer, colder. What once began as a fairy tale, an American actress marrying a British prince to escape scrutiny and serve humanity, has ended up in the place no fairy tale dares to go: betrayal, heartbreak, and war by legal proxy. At the core of the scandal tearing through the Sussex household lies a question as old as time and as modern as a laboratory test. Who is the biological father of the child in question? For Prince Harry, this isn't just about science, it's about truth, identity, and legacy. It's also about facing the one test no royal ever wants the world to see, a DNA test that could shatter both his personal life and what remains of his public reputation. When the private reports surfaced suggesting Harry might not be the father of the third child, an allegation reportedly hidden in a legal file linked to Meghan's business dealings. The discussion among legal experts immediately turned towards scientific verification. Was there a test? If not, why? And if there was, what were the results? As of now, no official paternity test has been confirmed by either party. Yet according to insiders close to both legal camps, there is mounting pressure behind the scenes for Harry to demand one. Some claim he already has. If true, that test could be the linchpin in deciding custody, financial responsibility, and perhaps most painfully, emotional detachment. Paternity testing in high-profile cases is typically carried out in extreme privacy. It often involves multiple samples, encrypted results, and the use of third-party intermediaries to maintain deniability. In Harry's case, it's likely that such precautions would be doubled. However, privacy in today's age is a fragile illusion, and leaks from even the most confidential processes are common, especially when stakes are this high. So, how would a paternity test in this context even work? Under standard procedure, DNA is collected via a buccal swab from the father and child. In California, where Harry and Meghan reside, both parties must consent unless court-ordered. That consent becomes particularly complex when a child is involved whose paternity is already under legal question and when that child's public status is deliberately shielded from the media. If Harry does not have legal confirmation of his paternity through medical records or birth certificates naming him as the father, he may need to petition a court for a compelled test. But doing so would open up other risks, namely the exposure of sealed court filings, public records requests, and further media intrusion into a matter that is already causing global headlines. Still, the benefits of confirmation or rejection are enormous. If the DNA confirms that Harry is indeed the father, the entire controversy could be spun as an overblown misunderstanding or even a malicious fabrication. Meghan's camp could claim the leaked report was based on preliminary legal discussions never meant to reflect doubt. Damage could be controlled, and the narrative restructured. But if the DNA confirms that he is not the biological father, then the narrative becomes irreversible. It would raise a series of deeply painful and complex questions, not just about betrayal, but about how long Meghan had known, whether there was another man involved, and whether the royal family or the public had been misled for years. In that scenario, Harry would be faced with multiple legal options. He could move to disestablish paternity in court, effectively cutting all legal ties to the child. This would relieve him of any future custodial or financial obligations, but at a tremendous emotional cost. A child he may have loved, nurtured, and protected would, from a legal standpoint, become a stranger. Alternatively, Harry could choose to maintain paternal rights regardless of biology, based on emotional attachment and prior recognition of the child as his. This option, while compassionate, opens a complex debate. Should someone be legally bound to a role they accepted under false pretenses? And what of the child's psychological development in the years ahead? Even more troubling is the possibility that Harry had suspicions before the document was uncovered. Was the report the first time the issue of paternity was raised, or was it simply the first time he could no longer ignore it? Some royal correspondents have speculated that Harry had grown distant from the child in question over the past year, skipping milestones, deflecting questions in interviews, and avoiding photo ops that featured the child. One paparazzi source claims that multiple offers to photograph the entire Sussex family were declined on the condition that only Archie and Lilibet be visible. That alone raises suspicion. Forensic psychologists who've reviewed public footage of Harry in recent months have commented on a visible emotional decline. His posture, facial expressions, and tone during interviews suggest a man under immense internal conflict. This observation aligns with what several close friends have stated. Harry has been unusually quiet about the child in question, even in private conversations. He never referred to the third child by name, one friend noted. It was always just the little one, or nothing at all. Another friend recalled a particularly unsettling conversation months before the report emerged. Harry had reportedly asked, "How do you know for sure a child is yours if you didn't see them born?" At the time, it was dismissed as hypothetical, Now, it appears to have been the beginning of a long, private struggle with doubt. This leads to perhaps the most uncomfortable truth of all. Harry may have been living in denial. Like many fathers who have reason to doubt but fear the answer, he may have chosen not to pursue a test until the evidence was forced upon him. Denial, after all, is a powerful sedative. And for someone who had already lost so much, his mother, his country, his institution, one more loss may have felt unbearable. But denial only delays the inevitable. If a DNA test has now been performed, or soon will be, the outcome will mark a turning point not only in Harry's personal life, but in royal history. Never before has a senior royal been subjected to public paternity scrutiny of this scale. Even the infamous rumors about Harry's own lineage, suggesting he might be the son of Princess Diana's former lover James Hewitt, were never met with legal documentation or testing. They remained in the realm of tabloids and gossip. This time, however, the accusations have legal weight and digital footprints. It's also worth noting that Meghan has thus far refused to publicly demand a test to clear Harry's name. One might expect a mother, if innocent of any deceit, to welcome a DNA test and end the rumors definitively. But Meghan's silence on this front has been strategic, even unsettling. It has allowed the ambiguity to fester. Whether that's out of legal caution, emotional shock, or calculation remains unknown. Meanwhile, pressure is building from the royal side for answers. Palace aides, though maintaining official silence, are reportedly preparing for all eventualities. If the DNA test confirms Harry is not the father, expect a formal statement from Buckingham Palace, perhaps not about the child, but about the broader royal lineage and its sanctity. If the DNA test confirms he is, they will likely move to stabilize Harry's image, perhaps even extend a quiet olive branch to help rebuild the shattered family narrative. The media, for their part, are circling like vultures. News outlets in the UK and US have already drafted speculative stories based on both outcomes. Tabloid headlines with phrases like DNA dagger and royal bastard have reportedly been trademarked in anticipation of a publishing war. Book deals, documentaries, and viral social media threads are already being planned. The public wants an answer, and whether that answer comes in days, weeks, or months, it will come. What it leaves behind, however, will be far more damaging than a single scandal. It will leave a trail of doubt over every image, every memory, and every choice made by a man who once believed he had finally escaped the curse of royal entrapment. In seeking freedom, Harry may have walked into a deeper prison, one made not of institutions, but of betrayal, biology, and irreversible consequences.